Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefühl. So, you've decided on a Mazda crossover. CX-5 is a little bit too big and roomy for you. CX-3, a little bit small, not quite big enough. So naturally, you've now decided that you're going to go for the CX... Wait, not the CX-4, the CX-30. Why? Well, there already is a CX-4, and that lives in China. Mazda have decided that that's not quite what they're going for the rest of the global market. So enter the CX-30. Is it any good? Let's take a closer look. To say that this car has been hotly anticipated is probably putting it mildly, and I will come out right from the start and say that I am a fan of Mazda's CX line from the get-go. Why? Well, first of all, I feel it compares very favorably at price point, and two, I really like the styling. It's a little different, it's a little edgy, but not too radically different. And I'm happy to see that many of those characteristics have made it through to the new CX-30, but with a little bit of a twist. It's a little bit bolder, and I guess you could almost say a little bit more brash than you may originally think a car of this size would suit the styling of. Look at that grille. It really is standing prominently, and this chrome effect trim around the underside and the sides really help to underscore the impression that this car gives visually right from the start. Styling details I really like are the way that the front cuts straight into these lights. It almost gives it an animalistic type of appearance on the headlights. It really does give the car a unique face. It suggests that it's a little bit more rugged, a little bit more robust than the Mazda 3, of course it should do, a little bit more ready for action, but it still manages to stay, for me, just on the right side of understated. I think I could have done without the chrome effect here, but that's just personal taste. It does look fresh, it does look new, but tell me, what do you think? Coming around to the side, and I'm seeing a lot more of that familiar CX DNA. Now, I'm noticing at this year's Geneva Motor Show that this is a bit of a trend. We're all familiar with this plastic trim on crossover vehicles, emphasizing a little bit more of their lifestyle. But this year, we're going with much broader definition. I think hopefully we're coming to the end of the massive wheel era. Yes, from a design perspective they look great, but from a fuel efficiency and ride comfort, not so much. So if we can do that visually while keeping the size of the wheels something close to being manageable, then I think that's going to make me happy. It should be about ride comfort and efficiency over visual aesthetic. I'm not in love with this massive use of plastic, but I do appreciate that it helps establish the aesthetic of the car. Now, talking of that, as we come slightly further back, bearing in mind we're at a live show, so anything could happen at any moment. It's really nice to see the way that those details have been followed right the way through. This strip on the bottom means that those two wheel arches don't stand out too much from the rest of the design. They are in keeping, and they really do give this its classic Mazda crossover feel. The doors feel solid and large within the framework, and if anything, the windows look a little bit small and undersized, but that does help make what is essentially a fairly small car look and feel quite aggressive. And I think as far as the lineup's concerned, that's a good add. If you want to go smaller than the CX-5, you want something that looks and feels a bit more sporty, a little bit more agile. And I think visually, that's really achieved nowhere better than on the sides. Does it follow through round to the back? Let's go and take a closer look. Coming round to the back, we see more of that animal element being brought into the design. Doesn't that just look like an eye of an animal with a hood over the top? That really emphasizes the animalistic aspect of this car, for me personally. So when you stand back and take a look at it all in one, that is immediately where your eyes are drawn to, both of these rear lights and their unique light signature. Now, for my taste, that's a really good thing, because when you get lower down, we have a rather large caboose. And on a car of this size, you don't really want to be immediately visually drawn to that. So I think it's a very smart design feature to pull a little bit of that focus. Now, this is an excellent opportunity to show you the boot. We didn't do this, but it's always a bit of a challenge filming at Geneva. I'm going to get in and hope that somebody doesn't shut me in there. We recently did the Polestar review. I don't know if you've had a chance to check that out, but apparently when they launched that, they demonstrated the size of the boot by putting a live dog in it. I'm not quite sure how much I think that's a great plan, but maybe Mazda in future could demonstrate their boots by having a live me jumping out. We'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, let's not forget, this is a very small crossover, so it shouldn't have an enormous amount of boot space, but honestly, that's a pretty decent size. You could fit standard size suitcases completely flat, and I like that the lip isn't too accentuated, so I really can load this out quite easily. Underneath, well, we've got a bit of storage space there, a nice bit of area for the base port on the stereo system, nothing to get wildly excited about, but I think that's as much room as you could reasonably expect in a vehicle of this size and class. And as far as the aesthetic goes, when you close it all back, I think it all ties nicely together. There's enough here to mark this out as being separate and unique from the rest of the CX lineup, but not too much to lose the features that we like so much from the line in general. I think, for my taste, there's a little bit too much in the lower third of this visually, but I am liking the durability of this. That's got to be the most common place to get bumps and scrapes. This looks very easy to fix, replace, and cover up anything that you don't want to admit to your partner. Well, by which I mean bumps and scrapes. So what's going to be powering the CX-30? Well, sadly, we have absolutely no information on what we're looking at right now, but we can tell you that they're going to come complemented with the Sky Active lineup, which you will be familiar with from the latest Mazda 3. So that's going to mean 1.5, 2 litre and 2.5 litre petrol engines and a 1.8 litre diesel available in Europe. There should also be an all-wheel drive unit available at a later point. So lots to look forward to there. Let's take a closer look inside. Well, I already came clean and told you I'm a fan of the CX styling, and there's no disappointment for me here either. One of the things I really like about Mazda is I never feel that they're trying to punch above their weight. The material selection is always quality enough. It always speaks to a little bit of nice design touches. Look in particular at the way that this edge comes right out of the side and is prominent here. Now, when I shut the door, you'll see how nicely that meets up with the dashboard. It's that and lots of attention to detail like that from a design point of view that really makes me like these cars so much. Okay, there are more expensive cars with more expensive features, but you know what? I think that at price point, this is really nicely put together. So the CX-30 is giving me exactly what I hoped it would do, both in terms of material use and in terms of finish. Let's take a seat in and see how it feels. If you're familiar with Mazda's CX line, then there is nothing here that's really going to blow you away as being significantly different from what you've already come to know and appreciate. What is nice is the way that this works within this size and profile of car. Now, some of those touches that work within the bigger Mazdas, I find a little bit compressed. They don't have enough room to breathe stylistically for me in this car. You'll see more of that, I think, when Thomas comes around and gives you an overview of the dashboard. But it is largely a question of taste. If you like the styling, you're going to be very comfortable in here. And if not, I suspect from having spent a good deal of time driving these things, that over time you will just come to not pay too much attention to the features that just don't quite work for you. Now, for me, the visual aesthetic of the steering wheel is a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know, I just feel like this could have been a bit more discreetly finished. It feels a little bit like an early 90s stereo finish to me. But that is very much my personal taste. I would say that that goes along with all of these chrome effect lines that they have throughout the design of the dashboard. It's just a little bit too much for my taste. But I can tell you from personal experience that the controls are very intuitive, easy to utilize, and very pleasing to touch and interact with. They feel solid and well put together. So I will forego an awful lot of shiny piano black plastic to know that everything in my car is going to work exactly the way that I like it. Now, if you're a fan of a Mazda 3, you like that experience, but you want a little bit more space, what I think Mazda has done particularly well with the CX line is maintain all of the things you like about the drive of those more conventional cars and just giving you a little bit more lift and space. Clearly, that's demonstrated in the driving position. I'm 5'10" or 178 centimeters, and as you can see, I have plenty of available headroom here. I would say you're going to be more than comfortable in this car anywhere up to about 6'2". I do have a long torso, so I am disproportionately tall at this point. I feel like I'm very low down within this vehicle, and that wraps me in a feeling of the solidity of the way that the car is put together. Everything about this car feels like it's introducing a higher quality point than you would expect at this price. Now, when we're talking about pricing, Mazda haven't yet released pricing for this model, but clearly it's going to come in at slightly under what the CX-5 is available at, slightly more than what you would be buying the standard models for. So I think if that price point looks good to you, it's really going to be worth your while checking this car out. Being a CX, it should be more than comfortable for adults. So the back should be just as nice as the front. Well, I've got plenty of spacious room back here and it is very comfortable, but let's have a brief look at the legroom. So not quite as much as you might like, but don't forget this is one of the smaller models. So if you are thinking of standardly needing to transport big guys around with you, you might want to look at the larger model up. But that said, the finish of materials and the presentation of the back is very nice indeed. There really hasn't been any lack of attention paid to the details back here, and the seats are extremely comfortable and supportive, so I could go on a nice trip in this. If you're thinking about comparing one of these to the Mazda 3, well, you get an extra 25 millimeters in ground clearance. That's around about that, and it does make a difference to the ride. But the real difference, clearly, is the amount of available space behind you. That's almost a third as big again as the Mazda 3. So that space can certainly come in handy. And as far as the way it relates to the interior, well, for the size and profile of car, I think you have more than enough room back here. So what do we think of the CX-30? Well, it's now in a very crowded marketplace, so the good news is if this isn't quite your taste, there are lots of other cars to choose from now. You don't have to be stuck with this. But I say stuck with this, that's something I personally would be very happy with. I can only recommend, if you haven't driven a Mazda for a while, take one out, give it a drive. The way the package all sits together is really nice indeed. So what I like from this experience is that all of the best elements of the CX line have made it through to the CX-30. It looks and feels very familiar. I think the styling works for this car. I can see that it wouldn't be to everybody's taste. So if you're looking at this thinking, I don't quite know, do give it a drive before you write it off. It's been very interesting to me to read a lot of the reviews of the rest of the lineup. I think it's been a bit of an opinion splitter, and for my money, I don't think it should have been. Not at this price point and for this much car. It's really a pleasure to drive and really great to own. So, if you can cope with the styling, if it's not too individualistic for you, then give one a try. I can tell you, you'll have an awful lot of fun. Guys, if you have any comments, anything that I haven't mentioned at all, please pop them below. Please subscribe, and we hope we'll see you all again soon.